Andrew, you are not going to believe what happened to me yesterday. I was at the coffee shop, just trying to order a simple iced latte, and the barista asked me a question, and my mind just went blank, totally, completely blank. I just stood there, staring at her like a deer in headlights. It was so mortifying.
Oh, Emma, I get that. Like, really, truly get that feeling. That moment where your brain just stops. It's almost like a physical block, isn't it? Well, hey everyone, and welcome back to SpeakCast English, the podcast where we talk about the real stuff, the messy stuff, the stuff that actually happens when you're trying to learn a new language. And Emma, what you just described, that's not just you, my friend. That's literally, I would say, 90% of our listeners right now nodding their heads, saying, yes, that is exactly my problem.
It's so frustrating. I mean, I know the words. I study every day. I can write complex emails. I can understand podcasts like ours, of course. But then, in a real-time conversation, especially with a native speaker, it's like all the English just evaporates from my brain, like it never even existed. It's truly baffling. I just stand there, feeling so silly, and then I just want to disappear.
And that feeling of wanting to disappear, that's a huge part of it, Emma. It's not just about the language anymore, is it? It's about the emotion tied to it, the fear of judgment, the fear of making a mistake, the fear of looking less intelligent than you know you are. I've seen it countless times with my students here in Vietnam. They are brilliant, incredibly smart, dedicated people. But when it comes to speaking, especially spontaneously, it's like a switch flips, and suddenly they're convinced they can't do it.
But why? Like, what is it about that specific situation that triggers such a strong reaction? Is it just general shyness, or is there something else going on? Because I feel like it's deeper than just being a bit introverted. It's a full-on freeze.
You're absolutely right, it's deeper. And this is where my experience living here, understanding the Vietnamese mindset, really helps. There are a few things at play. First, there's a strong cultural emphasis on perfection and avoiding mistakes. From a young age, in school, if you make a mistake, it's often highlighted, sometimes in front of the class. So the idea of losing face or making an error that might be seen as embarrassing is a huge, huge driver of anxiety. When you're speaking English, which isn't your native tongue, the chances of making a mistake feel much higher, so the pressure to be perfect skyrockets.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. Like, the pressure to be perfect is so ingrained, that makes total sense. So, it's not just about learning a new language, it's about overcoming a deeply rooted cultural expectation.
Exactly. And then, combine that with the internal translation process. Many learners, especially at the B1 level, are still trying to formulate their thoughts in Vietnamese first, then translate them word for word into English in their heads. It's like their brain is running two separate programs at once. And you know what happens when you try to run too many programs? The system crashes. That's your freeze. The brain is overwhelmed by trying to be perfect and translate simultaneously.
Oh, that's such a great analogy, the system crashes. I get that. So, it's like a processing overload. No wonder it feels like your mind goes blank. It's not blank, it's just overloaded and shut down.
Precisely. And the third thing, which is often overlooked, is the sheer speed of native conversation. We speak so fast, we use idioms, we connect words. Even a simple question like, "How's your day going?" can sound like one long word to someone who's mentally translating. So, before they've even finished translating the first part of the question, you're already expecting an answer, and they feel behind. That feeling of being behind also triggers the freeze response. It's a lot for the brain to handle.
That's wild. It's like a perfect storm of cultural pressure, mental gymnastics, and the sheer speed of it all. So, knowing all that, what do we do? How do we break through that in the moment? Because I can understand why it happens now, but when I'm standing there at the coffee shop, all that intellectual understanding doesn't help me order my iced latte.
You're right, it doesn't help you with the latte. So let's talk about some really practical things. Not steps, but more like little mental adjustments and tools you can keep in your back pocket. The first one, and this might sound too simple, but it's incredibly powerful, is what I call the 3-second pause.
The 3-second pause? What's that?
Okay, so imagine you're in that coffee shop situation again. The barista asks you something. Instead of trying to immediately respond, which triggers the panic, just take a conscious breath, a 3-second pause. You can even say something like, let me think about that for a second, or, oh, that's a good question. It buys you time. It gives your brain a moment to catch up, to process, and to not feel rushed. The pressure to respond instantly is a huge part of the freeze. If you give yourself permission to pause, you reduce that pressure significantly.
Wait, really? Just 3 seconds? But won't that feel awkward? Like, won't the other person think I'm weird or I don't understand?
That's a great question, and it's a common fear. But here's the thing, Emma. In a native conversation, a short pause, especially when someone is genuinely thinking, is completely natural. We do it all the time. Think about when someone asks you a really complex question at work. You don't immediately blurt out an answer, right? You might say, "That's an interesting point," or "Let me just consider that." It shows you're engaged, not confused. In fact, it often makes you sound more thoughtful and confident, not less.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of processing. I guess I just always feel like I have to prove I understand immediately.
Exactly, and that's where the pressure comes from. So, the 3-second pause, it's like hitting a mental reset button. Let me give you an example. I was once in a meeting and the CEO, a very fast talker, asked me a technical question about a project. My mind went blank. I felt that familiar panic, but instead of trying to force an answer, I just said, that's a really good point. Let me just frame my thoughts on that, and then I took a breath. In those 3 seconds, my brain actually had time to pull up the information. It wasn't perfect, but I was able to respond.
Okay, I can see that. So, it's about giving yourself permission to not be instantaneous. I guess I could even use a filler word to bridge that gap, right? Like,
Absolutely. Filler words are your friends here. They're not a sign of poor English. They're a sign of natural human speech. Things like, let me see, actually. These are all perfectly natural. They signal to the other person, I'm thinking, please wait.
Okay, so the 3-second pause, maybe with a little filler word. I like that. It feels manageable.
It is. And for our listeners, let's try a little shadowing moment with that. I'm going to say a phrase that gives you that pause, and then Emma, you repeat it, and then we'll invite everyone to say it with us. So when someone asks you something and you feel that freeze coming on, try this. That's a good question. Let me think.
That's a good question. Let me think.
Perfect. And now everyone listening, say it with us out loud. That's a good question. Let me think. Feel how those words buy you a moment. It's powerful.
Okay, I'm definitely going to try that. What else can we do when our brain just locks up?
The next tool is something I call the minimum viable answer. You know how in tech, they talk about a minimum viable product. It's the simplest version that still works. Your answer doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It just needs to be viable. It needs to get the basic message across.
Minimum viable answer. Can you give me an example?
For sure. Let's go back to your coffee shop. Barista asks, "Would you like room for cream in that iced latte?" And your brain freezes. Instead of trying to construct a perfect sentence like, "No, thank you, I prefer my latte without any cream because I enjoy the full flavor of the coffee," which is what your brain might be trying to translate from Vietnamese, just say, "No, thank you." Or even just, "No, that's a minimum viable answer." It's clear, it's correct, and it gets the job done.
Oh, so I don't have to give the asterisk full answer I would give in my native language, just the essential information?
Exactly. Often, especially in casual conversations, people are just looking for the core information. They're not judging your grammar or your vocabulary. They just need to know yes or no, or left or right, or I'm good. The pressure to elaborate, to show off your English, or to be polite in a way that feels natural in your own culture can actually be a trap in English. Sometimes less is more.
That's a huge shift in mindset, because I always feel like I need to be super polite and give a full explanation, like you said. But that's where the mental gymnastics come in, and then I freeze, trying to construct it perfectly.
It's a common trap. I remember teaching a student, a really diligent young woman, who was asked by her manager, "How was your weekend?" and she froze. Later, she told me she was trying to translate a long story about visiting her grandmother in the countryside. The food they ate, the family gathering. I told her, next time just say, "It was good, thank you." How about yours? That's it. That's the minimum viable answer. It's polite, it's correct, and it keeps the conversation moving without overwhelming your brain.
Okay, minimum viable answer. That feels very practical. Just focus on the core message. Don't overthink it.
Right. And this leads to the third powerful technique, which is pre-loading common responses. Think about the situations where you most often freeze. Is it ordering coffee, answering "how are you" questions, talking about your job? For each of those common scenarios, have 2 to 3 simple, ready-made phrases in your head. Not a script, but a few go-to options.
So, like rehearsing, but not sounding robotic?
Exactly. Not rehearsing a speech, but having a few comfortable phrases. For example, for "how are you?" you could have "I'm good, thanks, I'm doing well," or "pretty good, you," just those 3. They're short, they're natural, and they give your brain something to grab onto when the freeze starts. It's like having a small emergency toolkit of phrases.
That's clever. So, instead of trying to generate something new and perfect on the spot every time, I have some default settings.
Yes, think about it like a reflex. When someone throws a ball at you, you don't stop and analyze the physics of it, you just catch it. We want to build that kind of reflex for common English interactions. It reduces the cognitive load dramatically. I used to struggle so much when people would ask me about my background, living in Vietnam. I'd try to explain my whole journey. Now I have a simple, pre-loaded answer. I've been living here for over 10 years now, working in education. It's been an amazing experience. It's simple, it's true. And it prevents me from rambling or freezing up trying to find the perfect words.
That's so smart. So it's not about being fake, it's about being prepared and reducing that real-time pressure. I think that might be the biggest game changer for me. Because the pressure to come up with something original and perfect is what really gets me.
And it's what gets so many people. So let's do another shadowing moment for this. Let's practice a simple, pre-loaded response. Let's imagine someone asks you about your job, and you want to say you work in education. I'll say it slowly, you repeat. And then everyone joins in. I work in education, it's interesting.
I work in education, it's interesting.
Great. Now everyone listening, say it with us. I work in education, it's interesting. Feel how much easier it is when you have that ready.
That really does help. It feels less like a performance and more like a simple exchange. So, we've got the 3-second pause, the minimum viable answer, and preloading common responses. These all sound like they're tackling the pressure and the processing overload.
They are. And the final piece, Emma, is something more fundamental. Reframe mistakes as data. This goes back to that cultural pressure for perfection. We need to actively tell ourselves that mistakes are not failures. They are incredibly valuable information. When you make a mistake, it's your brain telling you, "Hey, I need to work on this specific thing." It's data for learning, not a reason to be ashamed.
That's a really positive way to look at it. But it's hard, isn't it? When you're in the moment and you say something wrong, the feeling of embarrassment can be so strong.
It is hard, but it's a muscle you can build. I remember when I was first learning Vietnamese, I made so many embarrassing mistakes. I once told a taxi driver I wanted to go to the hospital instead of the hotel because the words are very similar. He looked at me like I was crazy. In that moment, I could have felt shame, shut down, and stopped speaking. But instead, I laughed, corrected myself. And now I never confuse those two words. That mistake was valuable data. It taught me something concrete.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Take me to the hospital, please.
Exactly, and think about it. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. We stumble, we use the wrong word, we forget what we were going to say. We just don't freeze up because we don't have that same fear of judgment or cultural pressure that many learners carry. We just correct ourselves and move on. So give yourself that same grace. When you make a mistake internally, say, interesting, good to know, and keep going.
Reframe mistakes as data. I really like that. It takes the emotional sting out of it a little bit. So it's not about avoiding mistakes. It's about learning from them and not letting them stop you.
Precisely. It's about shifting your mindset from I must be perfect to I am a learner, and every interaction is an opportunity to improve. And that, my friend, is incredibly freeing.
Wow. This has been so helpful, Andrew. I feel like I have some really concrete things to try now. The 3-second pause, the minimum viable answer, pre-loading common responses, and reframe mistakes as data. That last one especially feels like a big mental shift I need to make.
It is a big one, and it's probably the most important long-term strategy for building true fluency and confidence.
Okay, so for me, the thing I'm going to try this week, because it's so specific, is the 3-second pause with a filler word. I'm going to practice saying, let me think about that, or that's a good question, when I feel that freeze coming on. I think just having that little phrase ready will make a huge difference.
That's a fantastic choice, Emma. It's simple, it's effective, and it immediately reduces that pressure. And for all of you listening out there, your challenge for this week is similar. I want you to pick one of these techniques, the 3-second pause, the minimum viable answer, or pre-loading common responses for a specific situation, and actively try to implement it at least 3 times this week. It could be with a colleague, a friend, or even just ordering food. Just one specific technique 3 times.
Just 3 times? That sounds totally doable.
It really is. And remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. It's about building those small habits that eventually lead to big changes. So, we've talked about understanding why you freeze, that cultural pressure, the mental translation, the speed of conversation. And we've given you some practical tools. The 3-second pause, the minimum viable answer, pre-loading common responses, and reframing mistakes as data.
These are such helpful insights, Andrew. It really makes me feel like I understand my own struggles better, and that's the first step to overcoming them.
Absolutely, Emma. And for all of you listening, we really hope this conversation has given you some actionable ways to tackle that frustrating freeze feeling. We're so glad you joined us today. It really means a lot. And we'd love to hear from you in the comments. What situation makes you freeze the most in English? Tell us your stories. We read every single one. See you in the next episode. Bye for now. Okay, before we go, let's quickly lock in the most important phrases from today.
Choose just one and use it today, even in a text message. That counts as practice.
All right, that's a wrap for today. Seriously though, which part of this felt most real to you?
Drop your answer in the comments, and if this helped you, like this video and subscribe. We post new episodes every single day.
This has been SpeakCast English. Thanks for listening, keep practicing, keep pushing, and we'll see you in the next one.